Hey there, it's Jason with the Marketing Podcast Network. Real quick, I want to make sure you know that the world's leading B2B Marketing Expo is returning to the Los Angeles Convention Center on March 21st and 22nd. It's high time we got back together to learn, see the latest technologies and solutions, and network, right? Join thousands of marketing professionals just like you to learn from over 250 industry expert speakers, educational masterclasses, and over 300 exhibitors. And this year, your ticket also gets you into the Sales Innovation Expo and the Marketing and Advertising Expo. So it's like 3 conferences in one. It's March 21st and 22nd at the Los Angeles Convention Center. Go to b2bmarketingexpo.us to register. That's b2bmarketingexpo.us. The Marketing Podcast Network is a proud partner of the B2B Marketing Expo for 2023. We'll see you in LA. Hey there, it's Jason Falls. If your company or maybe one of your clients sells to marketers, you look for advertising channels that guarantee business marketers are paying attention, right? Let me introduce you to the Marketing Podcast Network. You're listening to it right now. It's a network of podcasts all about marketing. So 100% of MPN's audience are marketers. Reach them by advertising on the Marketing Podcast Network. Learn more and find our media kit at marketingpodcasts.net.
I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. My guest this week is John O'Melia.
I'm not sure it's possible to completely recession-proof your brand. I think the vast majority of companies and brands right now are experiencing difficulties as we work through this period of time. But I do think there's a lot that you can do to put yourself in the best possible position to weather the storm.
John O'Melia was previously the CEO of Seal Software, which was acquired by DocuSign in 2020. He also held senior leadership positions in customer success and sales at EMC. Earlier in his career, he was a partner at Coopers Lybrand, PwC, where he oversaw projects in multiple industries. Over the course of his career, he has always sought to truly understand customers' needs and aspirations associated with their investment in technology and to ensure they realize the maximum possible return. John joined Contentsquare in 2021 as Chief Customer Officer. His customer success team works to ensure all customers harness the full power of Contentsquare's technology to drive significant business value. John, welcome to On Brand.
Thank you very much, Nick. That sounded really good.
Well, that's, I always say we start off with the bio and my skills go downhill from there. So it's very guest dependent. So speaking of Contentsquare, tell us a bit about kind of the elevator pitch of what Contentsquare does.
That's a really good question. I think our tagline is we help the companies we work with to make the digital world more human, which is a fantastic tagline. But what we actually do is we work with brands and companies around the globe, and we help them to really understand what is happening on their digital properties, whether that's a website or an application, mobile application, and we capture every interaction on those websites and applications and really demystify for our customers what's happening and why it's happening. And that sounds really simple, but when companies design websites, the designers have an expectation of what users are going to do and how they're going to navigate through the website. And the reality is very often different. So really understanding what's happening and why it's happening is incredibly powerful for those companies.
Well, and those big questions, the what and the why, I feel like they're as important as ever. But at the same time, we look back and we've been building brands online for decades now. And in terms of what we look at to answer those questions, it seems like there's a lot more that could evolve to. But I have a nagging suspicion that we may be underdeveloped in terms of looking at what that behavior is. Is that what you find in looking at customers' needs?
I think there's what's really interesting in this space for me is just the amount of information that is available to brands today when they look at the digital interaction with their customers, just the volume of information and how they can leverage that information to really optimize their experience is incredible. For instance, today, if somebody comes on your website, with a little bit of work, where they're joining from. You know what the weather's like in that location. So I know you're in Iowa and it's snowy. If the company picked up you was in Iowa and it was snowy, it would be much better if it was a clothing retailer to present you screens of rain jackets and woolly hats and mittens rather than t-shirts and shorts. And that type of information is available to companies today, and that ability to really connect with your customer at a place they're in and an environment they're in gives you a much greater chance of being successful and getting the end result that you're looking for. So I think that ability to really understand customers and really tailor your offering to them is really powerful. And one thing that it's very clear to me is, customers' expectations of what good looks like is rising all the time. So something, when the internet started that, was seen as exceptional service, maybe, blah, blah today, and people's expectation of what good looks like and what type of experience really feels good to them is always rising. So there's an onus on companies just to keep improving their experience day in and day out.
Well, as we talk about some of those changes too, and I know you can't, apply generalities across customers, but as we look at the landscape today and these strange past few years that we've been through, are there any emerging trends in what customers are looking for from brands, from from their sites?
I think people's expectations are rising. So if I take an example, I need some new sneakers or trainers, as we would say in the UK. And I go onto a website today, whether I go to Nike or go to Amazon, and I start browsing, and I have large feet. I have size 13 feet. I don't want to browse for 10 minutes, find the trainer I'm looking for, and then realize it's not in stock. It's just wasted time. Now, a few years ago, that, as a customer, you may have been willing to put up with that. But today, people expect to be presented with products that are actually available to be purchased. And so I think those subtle changes are very important, and customers are going to go back to the websites and go back to the brands where they feel like they get that great service. And as we talk about, making that world more human, where if you replicated an in-store experience, what would that look like, and how do you try and create that feel and engagement on a digital property?
So you mentioned earlier, even at the top of the show with Contentsquare's tagline of helping to make the digital world more human, and that was something that I really connected with and was nodding along with. As I think about it, that's a big concept. How can brands, what are some of the ways in which brands can make their online presence more human?
I think we're trying to recognize the situation for the consumer or the potential purchaser. So if you like something that we run into quite common is, let's say you've got somebody shopping on your website and they've been on the site for quite a few minutes, they've filled a shopping cart and they get to the checkout point, and they they try and check out, and there's a problem with the checkout process. I think we've all experienced it. Maybe it's asking for your postcode and it's not recognizing the postcode you put in, and you get in this endless cycle and you can't complete the order. And so you abandon the shopping cart, and you have a frustrated customer who's spent a period of time trying to find the right products, put them in the shopping cart, was ready to buy, and just couldn't because you had a glitch in your website. When companies spot that, and hopefully you spot it in near real time, it's a much better experience if you can go back to that customer and send them a link right away and say, hey, we recognize that you had a poor experience with us a few moments ago. We recognize you spent time doing this. We apologize for the glitch in our checkout process. Please find attached a 10% off coupon. And if you click onto this link, it will take you straight back to your shopping cart and you'll be able to complete your order. If you're a customer, that's a much more human experience. The company recognized it. It was giving you poor service at that moment in time. It did something proactively about it. It got to you as quickly as it could. It incented you to come back and complete your transaction. And if that works seamlessly from there, then you turn a bad experience into something that was good, and the likelihood of that customer coming back to you and being a advocate for you and your brand longer term is much, much greater. So I think it's that type of interaction when we talk about making the digital world more human that we're talking about.
Well, and what you described there too was what a human would do in that situation
Yeah,
of, oh, we
absolutely.
dropped the
Yeah,
ball, let's make it right. I think a lot of
yeah,
times we look for when we think about making something more human, we are quick to look for something big and showy, but a lot of times it is responding to moments like that where someone uh, eh, where something went wrong. And I feel like as we talk about looking at what's happening on websites, that's another data point that we should have our arms around a little more accurately as well. What's not going right for customers, whether it's an abandoned cart, an incomplete form, somewhere where the dots aren't connecting
yeah.
is probably one of those areas for a human interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree, Nick. It's generally the little things in life that make the big differences, and being humble and recognizing where you've had failures and taking the appropriate action, I think really help to build that relationship and that credibility. And that's really the power of Contentsquare. We can do that, and we provide a very broad range of tools to our customers to be able to look, and let's say somebody many websites have a voice of the customer feature where they can fill in a survey if things haven't gone well. And typically when customers do that, things haven't gone well at all, and they're very disappointed. But that survey goes back to a team at the customer who looks at that, to then be able to go back and have a what we call a session replay, where you can see exactly what that customer experienced and follow the activities that happened and see where the frustration came. One, you can fix that frustration point and make sure it doesn't happen for future customers, but you can also go back to that customer with a genuine reflection of what happened to them. It's not just a sort of bland sort of response. Sorry, you didn't have a great experience. Please accept this coupon or something like that. It's like, we saw what happened there. We understand you had, you got caught in a loop with this entering in your credit card details. We're very sorry. We've taken action, and we're gonna make sure that doesn't happen again. Thank you for your feedback, and we hope you continue to be a customer. That's a much richer experience for the customers. And, from my standpoint, you'd be much more likely to stay with that brand and be a repeat customer if you felt there was that level of engagement.
Right. And that's such a good point about keeping customers, which I think is, again, a point of clarity that we don't always. We're thinking about gaining more instead of those folks that are already on site in the experience and may not be getting served as they should be. On Brand will be right back after this.
Hey there, it's Jason with the Marketing Podcast Network. Real quick, I want to make sure you know that the world's leading B2B Marketing Expo is returning to the Los Angeles Convention Center on March 21st and 22nd. It's high time we got back together to learn, see the latest technologies and solutions, and network, right? Join thousands of marketing professionals just like you to learn from over 250 industry expert speakers, educational masterclasses, and over 300 exhibitors. And this year, your ticket also gets you into the Sales Innovation Expo and the Marketing and Advertising Expo. So it's like 3 conferences in one. It's March 21st and 22nd at the Los Angeles Convention Center. Go to b2bmarketingexpo.us to register. That's b2bmarketingexpo.us. The Marketing Podcast Network is a proud partner of the B2B Marketing Expo for 2023. We'll see you in LA. Hey there, it's Jason Falls. If your company or maybe one of your clients sells to marketers, you look for advertising channels that guarantee business marketers are paying attention, right? Let me introduce you to the Marketing Podcast Network. You're listening to it right now. It's a network of podcasts all about marketing. So 100% of MPN's audience are marketers. Reach them by advertising on the Marketing Podcast Network. Learn more and find our media kit at marketingpodcasts.net.
Now, back to the show. So we've talked a lot about, things that may not have gone right in the experience. As we look at the ecosystem that we find ourselves in right now, there is recession on the horizon here, and as brands look at the experience that they're providing, how does that factor into this work as well? Can we recession proof our brands?
I wish it was that easy. I'm not sure it's possible to completely recession-proof your brand. I think the vast majority of companies and brands right now are experiencing difficulties as we work through this period of time. But I do think there's a lot that you can do to put yourself in the best possible position to weather the storm. And I think IDC did a report recently where they talked about going into 2023, that customer experience is going to be more important than profits to customers as you're weathering this period. And I completely agree with that. And I think there's a couple of things that you can really do to really improve that customer experience. I think one is being very data driven. And like I said earlier, the amount of information we know around people who are visiting our websites, just from the information that's generally available, we have this rich data. And being able to leverage that data to really optimize that experience is really key. And it's amazing. I think research shows that out of digital brands that are out there, only 7% of companies today are really data driven and are really leveraging technologies like Contentsquare to really understand that data and get the insights and optimize their experience. So I think being data driven really gives you a chance to take competitive advantage. And I think the companies that are really going to thrive in this period and in the future are companies that are highly data driven. So that's certainly one thing from my standpoint. The second thing is, when we look at brands and we talk about customer experience, I think a lot of companies approach this from a superficial standpoint, and like to say we have a good customer experience, but the question I ask is it really part of your identity? Is it really who you are when you consistently engage with your team, with your websites, with your products? Is that customer experience, really part of your identity? And again, I think making that core to who you are is really important. So they would be the two things that I would really recommend companies focus on: being data driven and leveraging that as much as you can, and making sure that great customer experience is core to your identity.
I love that stat that you highlight. Oh, I don't love it. It's not great.
Yeah, yeah,
The fact about only 7% being data driven, because I feel like that's another one of those things that is easy to, we have general consensus around, data's important. We should be data driven. Yup, yup, yup. But then, hey, are you actually doing that? I'm not surprised by
yeah.
the 7%. So if there are folks listening and thinking, "Oh gosh, that's me. I talk about data all the time, but I'm not sure we're actually as data driven as we should be." What should we be doing if we want to say confidently that we are data driven?
I think it's very easy to engage with technology like Contentsquare. I think the work to implement is very simple. We put a simple tag on your website that collects this data, and then we provide a incredibly rich array of tools and dashboards and visuals to help you really understand what's happening. We even have AI that will surface insights out of the box, which are sort of recommended sets of improvements where we can, in an e-commerce world, you can actually make it very simple, where you can say, look, if you make this change on your website, it will uh, end up with this amount of increased revenue. You can very statistically talk about conversion rates, average shopping cart value, and know very clearly what changes you would make and what the likely financial impact of those changes would be. So, implementing technology like ours and then being able to get those insights and being able to take action on those insights is way easier than I think most companies would imagine.
That's that's such an important last point too, because I think sometimes it feels, after the initial shock of we're not truly being data driven, it feels like a mountain that we have to climb up. And what you just walked us through there are some important tactical steps that we can take. The other thing, when you talked about the two things being really important in times of recession, and being truly data driven, which we just talked about, and customer experience. And I really think that was an important point there, because on the data side of things, we're not doing it, and we kind of give it lip service, and we should, more of us should, by those stats that we heard. But I think when it comes to customer experience, a lot of times we do look at, as you said, the superficial of, we want something showy, we want some sort of headline making experience that blows people away. And not that you shouldn't want that, but those are made up more of the day-to-day moments. So how can we course correct the customer experience side of things as we head into uncertain times?
I saw a great example of this last week, which was really amazing to me. I was in London last week, and I was invited to be a judge on a set of customer experience awards. And one of the topics was around digital accessibility. How do you make your digital properties better able to serve people with disabilities. And there was a number of entries into this award category. And it was amazing to view these entries. The first one had done an audit of the website and identified all of the failings from an accessibility standpoint. And they put a project in place to correct those things, and they were in process of making those adjustments. So it was good. It was solid. The second company was one step further. They'd done the audit, they'd done the program of work, and they'd made all of the changes to the website. So they now had a website that met the sort of industry standards for accessibility. But it very much felt like it was a checking the box. We knew this was important. We did it, and now we got the check. The third company was a travel company, and they'd gone, to me, 2 or 3 steps further, where they'd not only done the audits, updated their websites, but it'd become really core to who they were. And they'd really bought into the challenges that customers with disabilities face. And they took it way beyond just checking the box and getting the certification. It clearly became part of their identity. If you looked at their artwork on the website, there was a good smattering of pictures of people with disabilities. But as they researched holidays, they did a section on every holiday and every location and every hotel on what the experience would be like for disabilities, and rated those properties for disabilities. And it had clearly become part of the company identity. And I could see that company, over time, people with disabilities will really gravitate towards this company, because it wasn't checking a box anymore. It was just core to who they were. And I thought that was incredibly compelling.
That's such a good point, and I love the idea of not just checking the box. I think with a lot of these topics that we've talked about, from looking at being data driven to customer experience, we have to do more than that. So obviously, those ideas are ones that make me smile with acknowledgement. As we start to wrap up here, John, what is a brand that has made you smile recently?
It's funny you should say that. I was at an event. We do these internal events with our company that we call CX Circle around the globe, and I've been traveling a lot over the last couple of months, attending many of these events and meeting with many of our customers. And again, I was at our event in London, and we had about 600 people in the audience, and I'm part of the audience. And we've got a number of keynotes in the morning session, and the next keynote pops up that it was a company called Love Honey. I don't know if you know Love Honey, but they're a sex toy company. Oh. And I'm sat there in the audience, and I have a minor panic attack that we've got 600 customers, and the next speaker is going to come up on stage and talk about sex toys. And I'm thinking, what are we doing here? This is thing. And the guy came up on stage, and he did an incredible presentation about his industry. He had some pictures that, we got lots of laughs from the audience on, but he talked about the unique challenges his industry face around digital experience, on what's a great digital experience in his world versus what you would typically expect, and some of the sort of best practices that we commonly have, backfire in his world. And, they have to look at the world differently. And it was an incredible presentation, incredibly well done, that I think really highlighted that, digital experiences are very nuanced. And depending on your product and on your market and your customers and the situation, you fine tuning that digital experience to make sure you have that real human connection can be very different in different situations. So that certainly made me smile, and I will always look out for Lavani from now on.
That is a great example, and definitely in some of the challenges out there as well. John, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
Well, probably two places. You can come to Contentsquare.com and learn more about the company and get a better idea of that. Or you can come and look at me on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn. And I've got a few articles that blogs that I've written over the last year or two that you're more than welcome to read.
Awesome. Well, we will link up to all of that in our show notes, which folks can find at onbrandpodcast.com. John, thanks for being on brand with us.
It was an absolute pleasure, Nick. Thank you very much.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.